How does that look?
No, I'm not saying that. You get some sense that there's a handful of stocks.
Look at that. I mean, you could tie that to the market. Bang.
Oh man, dressed in black. I tell you, sitting up straight today. You got nice posture. Anyone ever tell you
I
that? Nice posture.
Posture, it's important to sit properly. It's good for the back, the lower back. So I find when I slouch, I have issues during the day. So I'm trying to sit, you know, up in my chair. I'm engaged. You see the way I'm
Well,
like locked into you here?
you're looking strong today, like you're ready for a fight.
I'm ready for a fight. Remember that line, of course. You hear the word slouch, and don't kid yourself. You're an incredible
You're a hell
slouch.
of a
But
slouch.
that's
Yeah.
for another show. And I am ready for a fight. And I'm looking at your screen behind
Yeah.
you. I think that's over your right shoulder. I
Yes, it
can't
is.
make it out. It looks like, is that Sly Stallone in Rocky 3, or am I missing something?
Yeah, he's just clubbed down Clubber Lang, and Drago's about to take the stage. He's just going to tag off, and it's a cage match. No, dude, that's the No Mas fight. That is the famous Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, 1980 Louisiana Superdome. By the way, you imagine watching that fight in the upper deck of the Superdome. This was before 1980. You didn't have like the simulcast TVs. I mean, this was like, dude, must be in the front row. Anyway, yeah, that was No Mas.
No, it's crazy. I actually went to the Superdome for the first time. I think it was New Year's Eve, 1987 or 1988. Please don't at me, but I went to see the Don McPherson-led Syracuse Orangemen against the Auburn Tigers, and that ended in, I believe, a 17-17 tie. And I literally sat in the top row of the Superdome. You couldn't see anything.
Anybody on that Auburn team that I'm going to remember? Or
it's interesting. I think Coach Pat Dye. Coach Dye was leading the War Eagles, as they called them.
So, and speaking almost dying, right? So Roberto Duran quit that day. By the way, also just let's remind ourselves in 1980 where the boxing profession was. It was as good of a sport as there was out there. That middleweight division was stacked. I mean, you had Marvis Marvin Hagler, you had Wilfred Benitez, I think you had Sugar Ray, you had maybe even check me out here, a Vito Antifermo. No, but I mean, that tells you, like, I knew who these guys were. I couldn't tell you 3 boxers today other than Clubber Lang. So
it's a much different sport. I think you also had Thomas, the Motor City Hitman Hearns.
The Hitman.
In that
Thomas
mix
Hearns.
as well. Loved Tommy. Yeah. Listen, it's interesting about that fight. I think Duran came in 27-1. The only loss was to Duran, or Leonard came in 27-1. Yeah. And Duran came in like 72-1. And he did. He says, to this day, he did not say No Mas. He said Howard Cosell made that up, but he clearly quit. So my question to you.
Yeah.
Here's my question.
I hear where we're going.
I mean, he was a legend, and he quit. I mean, there's some stocks that have been legends over the last couple of years, but they have fallen on hard times, and they're starting to quit. I'll give you 3. You tell me where you would stay.
All right.
Peloton, just not particularly good, right?
No Mas.
PayPal,
no question.
Not particularly good. And then the one that's really and by the way, you've done a great job with this. Alibaba, except for that little run up to 175. I mean, here we are in the mid 130s. I mean,
I've been on both sides. I've bet on both sides of that fighter, and you're going in a couple different places here. I mean, first of all, No Mas could be the concept of a company that's broken, and it could be the concept of just a company whose best days are behind them. By the way, I mean, how many comebacks did Sugar Ray Leonard have? How many comebacks did Duran have? So companies aren't dead forever, and maybe they have a chance to reinvent themselves. And I'm of the view in today's day and age, you can be obsolete overnight, but I've seen some comeback stories that are better than Rocky 2 through 6. And by the way, how many Rockies were there?
It's interesting. I believe at the end there were a total of 6. I think the last movie, again, please don't at me if I'm wrong because I'm doing this from memory. I think the last movie was in fact entitled Rocky Balboa. So it ended where it started, as fate would have it.
It's like Star Wars. It's like Star Wars. Like you never knew what sequence you were actually watching these things.
The best part about Star Wars to me was, I thought Drew Barrymore's, young Drew Barrymore in Star Wars was
tremendous.
Just so good. And Richard Dreyfuss is, when he's building that mountain in Star Wars, I think he just did a great job with that.
His work, it was almost as good as his work on that fishing boat.
Sure.
Right. So I know what you're doing here. That was E.T. phone home guy. And the question is, which of these trades do you want? Do you want a phone home? Check this out now. So the COVID trade is, and the stay-at-home trade is a distant memory, clearly like Star Wars and Close Encounters are for you. Those trades are down 40 to 60% if you look across the board. And that's Zoom, that's Peloton, that's some of the other kind of stay-at-homes. It's even a Moderna. The question is, are those trades been so bad and left and basically given up that you actually, it's time to start nibbling? Because I think that's the question today with Peloton down, 60% off its highs.
PayPal to me is the one that looks the most interesting. PayPal has just gotten obliterated over the last few months. I think obviously that Pinterest news, whether real or not, sort of put a dent in them. And then the earnings release was not particularly strong. But I think in terms of a viable business, for me, it's PayPal. I think Peloton, best days are over. Although I still put my rear end in the saddle.
And it's obvious. It is so obvious, my chiseled friend. So I'm going to answer this a little bit differently. I'm going to say it may be no mas for the high multiple liquidity at all kind of trades. In other words, in a world where the Federal Reserve went berserk, and we talk about the Fed, and we'll save that for another commercial break, there are these moments where in markets, investors have to decide certain themes, certain approaches to investing, and the high multiple, not just, this is a tech company that's going to do well in COVID, it's their time. But look, there's been a time to invest in mega cap tech stocks, and we could start right there. And at times, financial pundits, if we may, overdo the growth versus value. But I'm just going to say right now, I think, maybe a little time for a little bit of no mas on growth trades. And it's not as simple as just saying go back to the basics with the big industrial companies. But it's been a painful period in the market for high multiple stocks. They have given up, Guy.
If you were a boxer in today's world, would you be a toe-to-toe guy? Would be somebody more dancing, trying to counterpunch?
So it's interesting you say that, because I was going to ask you, have you ever boxed? I mean, did you ever like what kid at some point doesn't think, I could do this? I could rope a dope a little bit. And so did you ever box?
I never went to boxing lessons, but in this final few seconds we have, I'm going to give you guys and gals a tip out there. If you're ever in a situation at a bar and you think something bad's going to happen, the person you need to worry about, it's not the person that takes off their rings, it's the person that takes off their watch.
Look, if it's time to throw down, it's time to throw down. That's the kind of guy I am. You're a great guy. It is commercial break. It is 6 p.m. on Reach TV, and it's that time.
Adios.